There are two things firefighters dislike: the way things are, and change.
Sometimes traditional ways clash with the need for change.
That's where we come in.
Slicing through the noise with insights that matter.
Welcome to Igniting the Shift Within.
Your launch pad to revolutionize the way you think and work
and lead.
Welcome to Igniting the Shift Within. I'm retired Fire Lieutenant David Dashinger, and today we are joined by Dr. Tracy Hejmanowski, who is a licensed clinical psychologist and founder of the First Responder Project. Tracy's First Responder Project runs restorative retreats for first responders and their spouses or significant others, and emphasizes the need to decompress and reconnect. And with Tracy today, we're going to explore the essential practice of resetting and recalibrating for firefighters. We'll discover how retreats can serve as a vital resource in addressing your needs and fostering healing. And finally, we'll share 3 tactical takeaways that you can use to stay resilient in your career. Let's dive into a conversation with Tracy. Tracy, it's so great to see you today.
Great to see you too, David. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, before we dive into talking about the recalibration and the retreats, just give us a little bit of kind of a snapshot into what you do. Like, how do you interact with first responder agencies in this area, especially fire agencies? What's your role with those?
So I'm kind of a freelancer now to some extent. I was in private practice part-time and left that to give more attention to more boots on the ground intervention. So I work with fire agencies, fire departments locally to do training, to provide peer support, what I call advanced peer support training. So beyond the introductory training, getting into more in-depth topics like personality styles and attachment styles, and helping people understand relationships and how that follows on to other issues. I meet with people. People call me. I go out to provide any kind of training. Occasionally, a debrief if there's a critical incident or something where they need more backup. I'm just kind of an extra asset for people when they need it. Certainly if there is a tragic suicide or something along those lines, I just show up when people need me to. I'm on also a response team for mass casualties and natural disasters and things like that. So it's enjoyable because it's one-on-one conversations, which I love and are always insightful, and I'm always learning as a clinician. I consider myself culturally competent, but I am always learning, forever learning from people. And a lot of that, I kind of just see myself as a conduit. So if somebody says something to me and it hits really hard and just hits the nail on the head, I will tell them I really want to share that with someone in the future. And so I'm just a conduit between people who don't know that they have a similar mindset or they have something in common. So I tell people all the time, you are in great company that you may never meet, but I can tell you that you're all out there and you all, you have a similar way of looking at the world, a similar mindset, a similar, heart orientation.
I've heard this phrase a lot recently, and I just wanted to bring it in. Why are firefighters so good at taking care of others, but we struggle to take care of ourselves? And in that mix, do we kind of lose compassion and judgment if we don't take care of ourselves?
Yes, to the second part of that question. And I think that can happen to anybody. I think that can happen to therapists. But anyone in a line of service where you are there to protect other people, to serve the community as a whole, to be the call, to be the person showing up in someone's dire moments, I think that has an addictive quality. I think we all have a desire to be vital. Not everyone, but most of us do. Certainly in the firefighter community, that there's just this innate desire to be there when something's happening. And I don't think it's a hero complex, because almost everyone I've ever met will eschew that label, and they don't want that. But there's such a drive and to alleviate someone else's pain and suffering, whether it be immediate or over a short period of time. And we have this, I think people who are there for other people there's a little bit of hypocrisy. And I mean that in the best possible way. But there's this idea of, I'm going to help you, but I'm not going to help myself. I'm the helper. I cannot be the helpee. And I think that needs to change, certainly, so that people understand that if my cup is full and it runneth over, I am not an asset to anybody anymore. And we have to be really tuned in and aware of when that's happening and what it looks like when it does happen. We can see it in other people when they're burned out or they're compassion fatigue. But when we're at that point, we don't problem solve, we don't prioritize things adequately. We might not even see the world or see what's going on the same way if we weren't stressed or we weren't full. So I wish that we had, we all have, a version of like an indicator, like a radiology techs, right? You got to get out of the booth. You've been overexposed. I wish we could do that as an emotional thermometer, so to speak, so that we could just look at other people and be like, oh man, and there's no harm, no foul. It's not like there's some, you're not good enough or strong enough or macho enough or stoic enough. It's just, you've been overexposed, just plain and simple. And one call can do that. A shift can do that. And a call that is really meaningful and really fills someone else's cup might not fill someone else's. It really depends on how they're viewing it, the meaning that they're making of it. And unfortunately, I don't think we spend enough time in that stress inoculation of firefighters and teaching them how to understand how it's impacting them, how it's impacting their brothers and sisters, and why that might be. Because just gaining understanding in that is more than 50% of the battle and figuring out what to do with it instead of just throwing it in the back and just waiting for it to, I can use the analogy of, having your truck and towing, a U-Haul, and every time there's something that's tragedy or threat or transgression or trauma, you just kind of throw it in the back. And as long as you're towing that U-Haul with a straight bar, not like a rope, it's fine. But most of us are towing all that stuff with a rope. And so we have to keep moving. We have to roll through the stop signs, just a little quick like this. We think everything's fine. No one gets hurt. But eventually there's probably going to be something that tips that into the back of into the bed of the truck. And it could be something personal. We all, and I always encourage people, and I have to remind this for myself, that you can't walk around 7/8 full. I mean, you can, but it's not a really good idea because something can happen in your family or with one of your coworkers and you need to be there. And that's not the time to tip that cup into another one. And even if you do, where do you put that cup?
And we also, we kind of wear that armor sometimes when we're being the first responder and, dealing with the tragedies and the traumas. But how does being human factor into that? Like, when can we kind of turn that off or take the armor off and then allow ourselves to be human?
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you said armor because it immediately made me think of two things. One is that to some extent in the fire service, the more chinks in the armor, the cooler you are, right? Like the more seasoned, that idea of you've been through it, you've been through the gauntlet. When it comes to the emotional, psychological aspects, then we will want to be chink free and not have any marring or, anything wrong with the armor. And that's just not realistic. And we need to help people find a way to be able to put words to that and not feel like they're weakening, they're appearing weak or incompetent in some way. I think that the other thing I think about with armor is that if you're keeping everything from, you're keeping everything from coming in, right? And nothing is going out. Mm-hmm. So that's also not a natural human experience to just internalize everything and then not be able to decompress or off gas some of that, that psychological energy, if you will. Right. And you see that when we're anxious or when we are stressed, we have physical manifestations. We pace, we bounce our knee, we crack our knuckles. It's energy trying to get out of the body. And a lot of times we just like clamp down on the armor and, imagine somebody coming back in a full suit of armor and they're lying down at night, and they're trying to get comfortable or their spouse is trying to hug them and there's just this cold steel between them. So it's important for people to understand that there's a time and place for the armor and there's a time and place to take it off. And what happens in that transition and how do you do it? And different people will have different strategies. Unfortunately, some people, it just never dawns on them to take it off. And it's because it's not a conscious thing. They just, we all feel better when we feel strong and impervious to stress. but it's just not realistic. The nature of the beast and the nature of the work is such that you're going to be an emotional sponge for not only your own experience, but that of the people around you. And I think that's underappreciated, that when you're walking away, that you're seeing and hearing and taking things in that are just kind of thrown right in the back immediately, like it's like a screaming parent, or, you know, just the visual of a child who is hurt, and so it just is like in one ear and out the other, but it's not, it's lodged in between the two ears.
Yeah, that is a crucial point. One that I give a lot of thought to, as, you know, responding, you know, we may respond to 8, 10, 12 or more runs in a day or in a shift. And so you accumulate all those different kind of emotional, energetic scenarios that we, in some way, shape or form, we're taking some of that away with our, you know, as we move on to our next day, leaving the firehouse, we're bringing it with us. So I love that you're pointing that out. And so along those lines, you know, of that and recalibrating, resetting, so we can be more effective on the job, more effective as spouses, parents, whatever we do out there. What do you use, or what are some of the tools you found to be effective to help firefighters to kind of reset, get back into, you know, being effective as first responders?
Sure. It's a great question. So I think that it's about conscious awareness. It's about understanding that after a call, and the beauty of the fire service is that there's opportunity to come together. Other types of first responders don't always have that. So there's an opportunity to do kind of that debrief. And I think there's a tactical operational debrief, and there's a psychological, emotional, human debrief, and being able to recognize when there is what the elements are, what the aspects are of that. So when you're coming back from a call, was there threat, were there issues of having to do with that was dangerous, that because then they have the what ifs and if onlys and it could have and should have. What was the interaction? Because two people are showing up to every call, a firefighter and the human. And that human is then parsed out into, okay, I'm a parent and this had to do with a child, or I'm a parent and I saw transgression by another parent. So there's all these subtle things going on in the background. So I think it's important to be conscious and to do a mental debrief, because what that does is it allows you to put those things in appropriate categories and boxes. So it's a little bit more organized. And to realize where it is in the body and how it may be affecting other people. So the more conversation that can happen about that, and it doesn't have to be ongoing and long, it just has to be, I think, sort of routine and built in to that, because otherwise it's going to impact perspective. So a firefighter parent who would otherwise, run over to their kid and, have compassion and just kind of do a little bit, there, you're going to be okay, might turn into, that's nothing. Like people get injured way more than that all the time. And it comes across as like cold-hearted and disconnected. And I don't ever think that's intentional. It's just that when you just saw something, when you're operating in extremis in these, austere conditions, it will naturally slide your perspective over to this is really bad. But the general population is working on, these are the goalposts. And when your goalposts go way over here, that they're not going to understand and have that perspective. So that perspective is a gift and a curse. It can keep you feeling like, okay, it's not that bad. And it can mitigate stress in yourself, but it can alienate you from your family, and they can marginalize you, in that way. And so then there becomes this invisible force field of, I can't tell you things, or I don't want to tell you. One, because I think you're going to fly off the handle, or a child telling a parent, right, that something's going on. Right. So I'm not going to tell you I'm being bullied at school, because I'm pretty sure you're going to get in your car and drive Mach 1 to the school, and you're going to make a big deal, and you're going to embarrass me, so you can actually, we can shut our kids down, and we can shut our spouse off, or our parents, and that communication just starts to dissipate because they anticipate the response is going to be, kind of like dismissive or just strange to them. So that dynamic of, okay, what am I carrying around with me is, I think, our obligation as adults and as people who care for other people, that we have to compartmentalize that, or sort of do a psychological autopsy on, okay, what was that all about? And just the ability to do that, and the action of doing that, will naturally dissipate the emotional valence or energy with it.
Since we're focusing on the topic of the retreats and some of the activities and ways that people kind of reestablish a connection with their spouse or significant other and do some team building with people they may have perhaps not even known before the retreat, can you touch a little bit on how the retreats work and what you do there that helps firefighters kind of get back into balance?
Absolutely. So I've done therapy for 24 years and I value it, and I enjoy doing it, and I've seen that it's been helpful for people. That being said, I've been running retreats for 14 years and with different populations, and there's a therapeutic element to a retreat that can never be replicated in one-on-one, even in like a group format of therapy. Therapy is its own animal. What I've noticed over time in retreats and why I'm so dedicated to providing them is because there's this exponential shift in people. Part of it is that we make sure it's nature infused, nature centric. So we're just in the natural elements, and there's a lot of healing that can come from that. Not to sound woo-woo about it, but they're just being around water, and we don't even realize it, but we feel, we're breathing a different kind of air, and we're just surrounded by nothing that's going to inherently harm us. So it's nature infused. It's all about team building and camaraderie with strangers, and we see people sort of show up kind of like this, like, how did my loved one drag me here? How did I end up here? And then and that's why I love working with first responders, is because it doesn't take long. The jokes start being cracked immediately. People are teasing each other, and we give them some difficult problem solving. So there's a challenge to it. The other interesting piece is that they have their support person with them. Mm-hmm. So there are times when we'll say, okay, firefighters, right? We're going to blindfold you now, or you're mute. You can't say anything, or you're only allowed to behave based on or act based on what your support person is telling you. Well, you want to see, smoke come out of people's ears. It's like, why can't take a back seat? I don't do this. So it also is to let them know that, it's great to be the go-getter. It's great to be the person diving in, but there is value and something to be learned from stepping back and being able to breathe their way through that. So your support person, whether it be a spouse or whomever, has an opportunity to say, I know how to do things, right? And what we also see is that they solve it differently, and it's not wrong. It's just different. So that dynamic is interesting as well. But we see this trajectory, over the course of 3 days, where people come in and we see a shift in disclosure. So people start off being somewhat kind of internal, and then they start sharing. I believe that trauma is meant to be shared. And I don't mean just like throwing it out there, but when we keep it behind our teeth, it does nothing but become toxic. So by getting people out and doing team challenges, and of course there's always competition and what team is going to win. But it's lighthearted and it's fun. The humor is irreverent and dark and appropriately inappropriate. And there's as much laughter as there is serious discussion. And we orient it so there's a nice rise and fall and kind of ebb and flow to it. So we'll be in a conversation sitting in a room and talking about really painful or meaningful, profound things. And then, okay, let's everyone go kayak or fish for a little bit, or go walk the property, or let's go play volleyball or whatever it is. And then we dive back in, we break bread together. And then, so it's all organized in that way. A lot of what we do too is symbolic work. So it's not straightforward of like, let's talk about your feelings. And most people don't want to do that. I've been to retreats as a therapist. I don't want to do that either. So, but we find that when we do mask making, talking about identity and concept of self and how we view ourselves and we think other people view us, when you ask people to create something without using words, it changes the entire game. And then they feel more comfortable sharing about it. It's almost just, it's like organic, like, I just want to talk about it now that I have this thing, to show. We do narrative therapy. There's a prompt that we give. One of the newer prompts that we give now is particularly for firefighters, first responders, is it just starts off, Dear Death. And first people are like, I don't get it. I'm like, oh, capital D, right? You're personifying death, however you want to see it. And you're going to write a letter to death. and give people a pen and about 20 seconds of thinking, and then you just can't, we just leave the room, right? We'll pop back in, people are still writing. Okay, we'll pop back out, and go back in, people are still writing. And what we hear people say is that I had no idea these thoughts and feelings were in me, and I couldn't stop writing. Like it was flowing, like I couldn't write fast enough. My brain was just on fire. And in the process of it is what's so interesting to people. The content is unbelievable. I mean, it'll render you to tears. It's powerful. There's struggle. It's just an incredible exercise, but it's just yet another way of getting at, what's inside. And for loved ones, if they choose to share that, because we separate the loved ones and the firefighters at times, several times, to do their own thing. And they have their own, camaraderie in those groups. Mm-hmm. But if they choose to share that, what an enlightening moment, for their loved one. And they don't have to talk about it. It's just like, here's my mask, or here's my story. So we try to get at things sort of indirectly. Nothing that we do is incidental, and none of it's accidental. It's always, it's not templated either. We go off the direction of where things are going, not the clock. Mm-hmm. So, we are semper gumby when it comes to our schedule. So our staff is always zigging and zagging, like, what are we doing now? But we'll expand and contract as we need to. And that's always born from the group that we have. And every group is different. They connect differently. And sometimes we think, I don't know if this group is really going to, open up. And those are typically the groups that surprise us. Right. By the first bonfire, we have people saying, how long have we been here? Did we get here today? Because it feels like, we've been here a couple of days. And by the second one, they don't want to leave the next day. And so you just see this, I think everyone's humanity and humanhood comes forth, and they're able to shed that. And a lot of times, like we all know that when we go on vacation, there's all this stress before vacation because we have to set everything up. Mm-hmm. And then the first couple of days of vacation, we're still standing in the hammock. We're not really able to kind of just go with the flow. And then we're usually the day before the trip is over, then we start to relax. But we see, and we've kind of done this on purpose so that people relax quickly. Mm-hmm. And they relax hard, and they think hard, and they, connect in a very intentional way. So it's it's like, just add nature, just add, this content, and everyone else fills it and creates something, as a cohort, as a group. So it's really special.
It sounds incredible. And I'm personally looking forward to attending my first retreat of yours.
Yes, can't wait to have you.
Yeah. And so we just have a couple of minutes left. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about where you hold the retreats. How can people find you, learn more about the retreats, and what else would you like them to know about the retreats?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. So the website is firstresponderproject.org. Mm-hmm. And we have different events listed on there. We just had a big summit that we wrapped up a couple of months ago. That was like a workshop-based summit. And we have one every year. But you'll see under the events that the retreats are listed. And then when you go to register for that, they'll give you, it'll show you all the different dates. So we have 4 standard retreats happening in 2025. We'll definitely be adding at least 2 or 3 more. We always have to keep our retreats open to all counties and people from different states and whatnot. But occasionally we'll have a retreat specific to maybe if, for example, if there was a mass casualty event or several interagency response, we could have something like that. We just want to make sure as a nonprofit that we always have everything open. It typically starts on Friday at 10 a.m. and goes to Sunday at 2 or 3 p.m. We feed everyone. It's catered. We put you up. Typically our retreats are in Live Oak, Florida. Okay. And we're also looking at other locations just to have some kind of different options. Some places have horseback riding, or they have canoeing and that type of thing. So, and we, as a team, we're all volunteers with First Responder Projects. So we also want to make sure that we have some variety and we keep our energy up. And And we can just kind of keep shifting and moving, adding different elements. But it's incredibly simple to sign up. The application is a one-pager, and I shouldn't say application, it's a registration.
Okay.
If you're a first responder, if you're a firefighter, we're accepting you. And so it's just registering, letting us know if there are food allergies and things like that, who are you bringing, what their background is. We make sure that we give equal attention and care to the support person as well, the minute they show up. And then, we jump right in, and I mean, literally jump right in. You get a name tag and off in the woods you go, and we'll let you know what you're doing the minute you get there. But that registration form comes right to me. I put it in the file of whatever month that someone chooses. People shift a lot. Obviously, with the last hurricane, 3/4 of the people had got recalled naturally. Mm-hmm. And so people often say, hey, can you slide me to the next one? I can't make it. I got, absolutely. And we can always add more people. We're never, we have enough rooms that we try to keep it intimate. So in terms of this group size, so we never have more than 30 people, and that's very intentional. So it's very, very easy to get a hold of us.
Well, I know you create magic in pretty much everything you do. And again, I salute you for having this vision and being able to create this retreat and retreat for first responders and veterans. I'm sure it's transformative, and I look forward, like I said, to experiencing it myself. So one last thing before we wrap, and that's, can you share with us 3 tactical takeaways that firefighters can use to kind of up-level their daily life or shift?
Absolutely. And this will naturally, it's coming from a shrink, so it's going to be all psychologically based. But I think the first thing to do is everyone needs to be humble enough to know themselves truly, like more than we think we know ourselves. And part of that is doing an internal size up, is every once in a while, putting something in your phone every month where you sit down and you just contemplate what is going on, how are my relationships, sort of grading these different parts of your life. And part of that is getting feedback. So part 2 is getting feedback from other people, asking people, how have I seemed lately? How's my mood been? Ask your spouse or kids. Asking your kids is a great way to get feedback. They will not hold back in a wonderful way. They will let you know exactly how you are, and they will tell you your business in a heartbeat. So if you can really be humble and brave, ask your kids how things are going. And then the other piece would be to, in terms of the work that you do, is catalog the complexity of it. It's not just simply, oh, this was the call and it's a one-liner description. There's more to it than that. And that's important to know for yourself, to get really good at doing that psychological autopsy, so to speak, and also to do that with your buddies, because when you open up, it gives everyone else tacit permission to open up. And that's why we see that at the retreat, it just takes one person to put their heart on their sleeve and say, I'm over the stigma, I don't care what this is going to look or sound like. So that gives you an opportunity to ask other people, especially if you're a leader, to sit down at the kitchen table and say, okay, let's not just debrief this, but let's really crack it open and see all the different elements, and to think about and let people know this is going to hit all of you differently, because you all come from different places and you have different perspectives and paradigms, and you're going to make meaning of this differently, and all those meanings are okay. Just know what it is. Don't just walk away from it and just throw it in the U-Haul.
Incredible. Thank you for sharing those, and thank you for being here to have this conversation, which is, I look forward to speaking to you every time, because you always come up with some amazing, creative, innovative, insightful things that benefit first responders. And I really thank you for all your work, what you do out there for your mission to support us.
I appreciate it, David. It's never work, as you know. When you love what you do and you're around good people, it's always phenomenal. So it's been a pleasure speaking with you, as always. Thanks so much.
Join us next time for Igniting the Shift Within. We're going to be speaking with other game changers who are helping shape our profession. And in the meantime, stay safe, take care of each other, and keep igniting that shift.
There are 2 things firefighters dislike: the way things are, and change.
Sometimes traditional ways clash with the need for change.
That's where we come in.
Slicing through the noise with insights that matter.
Welcome to Igniting the Shift Within.
Your launch pad to revolutionize the way you think and work and lead.